The fog rolls in thick, swallowing the headlights of cars and the edges of the road. Time feels different here. Along these roads, the world slows. Some say it stops entirely. Shadows cling to the trees and drift across the asphalt. The wind carries whispers that are not human. Travelers report engines dying without reason. Clocks stop. Figures appear in the mist, standing still, watching, waiting. Some never reach the end of the road. Some are seen years later, unchanged, wandering the same fog. Tonight, we travel 20 haunted fog roads where time stops, where the mist hides what follows you, and where every turn might lead to a place from which there is no return. If you were driving alone and the fog thickened unnaturally, and a figure appeared silently ahead, would you continue, or would you turn your car around before it notices you? Hello, my dear friend. I hope you are safe tonight, because the roads we are about to explore are not for the faint of heart. Fog roads are beautiful by day, mysterious by evening. Some of these roads have existed for centuries, carved through forests and hills, connecting towns long forgotten. Others were built during the early days of motor travel, and their history is stained with tragedy. And utterly terrifying after dark. Shadows moving in ways that defy logic, whispers that call their names, and the sense that the road itself is alive. Some cars stall without explanation. Some explorers feel pressure in the air, as if the fog itself is holding them in place. Figures appear ahead, and when they vanish, it is as if they never existed. Some who travel these roads never return. Some who survive are haunted by visions of figures walking alongside them. And some say the fog keeps secrets that should never be known. Before we step onto our first fog road, let me ask you this. If time stopped, and you realized the road behind you had vanished, would you walk forward into the mist, or turn back into the darkness you know? Take a slow, steady breath, and let us journey down the most haunted fog roads where time stops. Whispering Pines Road stretches between towering trees, their trunks straight and dark, needles forming dense canopies overhead. The road is narrow, winding, and often slick with moisture, the asphalt dappled with shadows from the tall pines. Fog rolls in regularly, thick and almost tangible, curling along the tires, climbing over mirrors, and swirling around the edges of vehicles. The fog moves with a deliberate, slow fluidity, as if the mist itself possesses awareness, shaping the path and enclosing travelers in its presence. Figures appear intermittently within the fog. They stand motionless, pale and indistinct. Their forms partially concealed by the mist. Observers feel the weight of attention. As though the shapes are aware of their presence. Watching silently from the roadside or between the trees. The figures do not move when approached. And vanish when the eyes fix directly on them. Leaving only the lingering impression of presence and intent. The fog amplifies sound in strange ways. Wind rustling through the pines becomes layered with whispers and subtle noises that seem to originate from the mist itself. Travelers often swear they hear their names spoken softly, drifting from the fog in voices too quiet to locate, yet unmistakably personal. The effect is disorienting, creating a heightened awareness of movement, breath, and the surrounding forest. Shadows along the road stretch and twist unnaturally. Light from headlights or passing lanterns bends across the fog, producing elongated shapes that suggest movement and form. Shadows detach from ordinary sources, sliding along trunks, curving across asphalt, or appearing to cross the path in anticipation. These visual distortions enhance the feeling that the road is alive, reacting to each step, each glance, and each passing car. Time perception shifts along Whispering Pines Road. A brief journey may feel elongated, as though distance is stretched. While longer stretches of driving can compress into fleeting moments. Fog curls in patterns that seem to guide attention. Slowing perception or bending awareness of distance. Travelers sense that each curve, each rise and fall of the road is shaped not only by terrain but by the immersive environment created by mist, shadow, and unseen observers. Created by mist, shadow, and unseen observers. Travelers sense that each curve, each rise and fall of the road is shaped not only by terrain but by the immersive environment created by mist, shadow, and unseen observers. The road itself seems responsive. Tires disturb fog, creating swirls that linger and move like living tendrils. Mirrors reflect faint shapes that disappear when focused upon. Each movement produces echoes in sound, shadow, and visual distortion. Travelers find themselves moving more cautiously, aware of subtle cues that suggest presence without form. Even pauses in the vehicle produce changes in perception, as if the environment adjusts to stillness as readily as motion. Auditory phenomena layer unpredictably. The rustling of needles blends with distant echoes, whispers, and the faint crunch of imagined footsteps. These sounds rise and fall in intensity. Sometimes aligned with motion, sometimes independent. Travelers often strain to locate origins, only to find the fog both hides and projects, creating multiple points of apparent activity that cannot be mapped. Cannot be mapped. Light interacts with the environment to produce fleeting, spectral impressions. Headlights reflect on moisture along branches and asphalt, producing shimmering halos or fragments of figures. Moonlight filtered through pine needles casts moving patterns that mimic humanoid form. Observers notice subtle, shifting shapes along the periphery of vision, reinforcing the sense that the road is actively inhabited by something unseen. Travelers frequently experience physical sensations associated with presence. A chill may pass suddenly across the shoulders, hairs on the neck rise, and the chest feels heavy. These effects intensify near the edges of the fog, or where figures appear. The sensations are subtle yet undeniable, reinforcing awareness of environment, movement, and observation. Attempts to record experiences along Whispering Pines Road often fail. Cameras produce blurred images, capturing fog and shadows without clear form. Audio equipment records faint whispers, rustling, or the indistinct echo of names, yet the sources remain invisible. The road preserves its phenomena in perception and memory, resisting ordinary documentation while reinforcing its immersive, responsive nature. Even brief travel along the road leaves lasting impressions. The twisting shadows, the movement of fog, the whispered names, and the pale figures remain vivid in memory. Time, distance, and sound seem altered, leaving a sense of disorientation and heightened awareness. Travelers describe feeling observed, guided, and enveloped simultaneously. Aware of presence without being able to locate it. Whispering Pines Road endures as a narrow, winding corridor between ancient trees. Where fog moves with intention, figures watch silently, and voices drift softly across the mist. Shadows twist, light reflects unpredictably, and time bends perceptually across each mile. Visitors emerge carrying memory and sensation, aware of presence, observation, and the uncanny rhythm of a road that is alive in fog, shadow, and whisper. Fogvale Highway stretches through dense forests and open plains, its asphalt dark and reflective under the night sky. What seems a short, familiar route during the day transforms after dusk, elongating in ways that defy expectation. Landmarks appear farther apart, turns seem delayed, and distant trees loom closer than memory allows. The highway produces a subtle sense of disorientation, as if space itself is being altered by darkness and the weight of the night. As if space itself is being altered by darkness and the weight of the night. Vehicles traveling the road often experience unexplained phenomena. Engines stall suddenly without warning, leaving the car silent except for the soft hum of night insects and the wind moving through nearby trees. The combination of mechanical irregularity and darkness produces unease, magnifying perception of every shadow and movement along the roadside. Figures appear alongside vehicles, walking at the edge of headlights. They are human in form but move unnaturally, their feet never touching the asphalt. They are human in form but move unnaturally, their feet never touching the asphalt. Matching the speed of the car, yet leave no tracks or disturbances in the environment. Peripheral vision often detects them first, fleeting shapes that vanish or merge with fog and shadows when observed directly. Fleeting shapes that vanish or merge with fog and shadows when observed directly. Their presence produces a persistent sense of being accompanied by an unseen observer. Passengers frequently report physical sensations that accompany these sightings. The air seems heavier in some sections, pressing subtly against the chest or face. Combined with visual perception, these tactile effects heighten alertness and create an immersive psychological experience that engages attention at every turn. Fog amplifies the highway's anomalies. Low-lying mist creeps across the asphalt, partially obscuring distant trees and streetlights. Light refracts through the fog, casting shifting shadows that move independently of actual objects. Figures in peripheral vision blend with these shadows, producing the impression of additional movement. The fog also softens sound, altering echoes and distorting the familiar hum of engines or whine through the car. Time on Fog Veil Highway feels altered. A short stretch may seem extended, with minutes stretching into what feels like an hour. Turns, intersections, and passing landmarks appear delayed or shifted. Peripheral figures appear and vanish repeatedly, reinforcing disorientation and producing the sensation that the road itself is alive, responsive to presence and attention. Auditory phenomena accompany visual experience. Faint footsteps echo alongside the car, sometimes matching the pace of travel, sometimes advancing or lagging slightly. Wind whistles through trees in patterns that suggest communication or movement. Engines produce subtle vibrations that feel synchronized with the peripheral figures, amplifying the sense of observation. Sound reinforces perception of motion and presence beyond ordinary expectation. The highway's environment is interactive in effect. Slowing the vehicle reduces intensity of visual phenomena, though figures remain intermittently visible. Rapid movement increases the appearance of shadows and enhances perception of presence along the roadside. Peripheral awareness is constantly engaged, as the road produces subtle manipulations of attention, light, and sound that keep travelers alert and immersed. Documenting the experience is difficult. Cameras capture fog, light, and tree lines, yet the figures, shifting shadows, and sensation of presence rarely appear. Audio devices record wind and occasional mechanical hum, but do not capture footsteps, drafts, or whispered sound patterns perceived by passengers. Fog Veil Highway preserves the phenomena for those present, resisting technological reproduction while maintaining its immersive impact. The sense of being observed, accompanied, or guided down the road is persistent, producing tension that remains long after the journey ends. A memory that extends beyond the highway itself. Exiting the highway does not immediately release the perception of influence. Memory of shadows, figures, drafts, and distorted time persists. And subtle environmental manipulation. Fog Veil Highway endures as a place where darkness, fog, and perception converge. Figures walk alongside cars without touching the asphalt. Headlights flicker unpredictably. Cold drafts move with apparent intention. Travelers leave changed, carrying the impression of a road that observes, interacts, and transforms ordinary experience into an immersive, haunting journey that lingers in both memory and awareness. Moonlit Hollow Road winds through dense forest, a narrow ribbon of asphalt swallowed by fog that clings low to the ground. The moon barely penetrates the mist, casting pale, diffuse light that illuminates only the immediate surroundings. By day, the road is quiet but ordinary, lined with trees and the occasional clearing. Travelers passing through feel the isolation, yet nothing hints at the experience that unfolds after darkness falls. At night, the road transforms into a space of disorientation and perception. Shadows stretch and bend in ways that defy ordinary light. Trees cast elongated forms across the asphalt, twisting in angles that seem impossible. Branches arch like hands over the roadway, and shadows slide along the ground as if moving independently of the objects that cast them. Every turn in the road feels deeper, every clearing larger, as the fog shifts and thickens around observers. Unreal doors appear in the mist. Travelers report seeing doorways emerging within the fog, their frames precise yet impossibly placed. Some are set in the trunks of trees, others float midair, anchored to nothing. When approached, they vanish instantly, leaving only fog and shadow. The doors appear repeatedly along the path, always in different locations, always fleeting, producing a sensation that the road itself is alive and reshaping perception. Footsteps echo along the asphalt. Steps fall in time with no one present, following travelers as they advance along the road. The echoes are crisp and deliberate, bouncing off fog and trees, and sometimes seeming to come from multiple directions at once. Each step amplifies the sense of presence, the feeling that something unseen is observing, moving, and measuring each movement. Fog thickens unpredictably. It shifts and rolls as though alive, forming walls, corridors, and pockets that obscure vision. Travelers feel the air pressing against skin and clothing, carrying a chill that rises and fades with no discernible source. The fog guides perception, bending light and space, making the ordinary road into a landscape of uncertainty. Sounds layer unnaturally. Branches creak, footsteps echo, doors appear silently, and the occasional murmur drifts through the mist. Voices are indistinct, sometimes resembling speech, sometimes mere vibration. The soundscape combines with shadows and fog to create an immersive environment that surrounds and unsettles every traveler. Time and distance distort along the road. Minutes stretch into moments that feel far longer than measured. Spaces seem expanded. Curves lengthen. Clearings appear farther apart. And visibility becomes inconsistent. Travelers report losing track of how far they have walked. How long they have been on the road. And where the next bend will lead. Attempts to document phenomena produce mixed results. Cameras capture fog, trees, and asphalt, yet doors and shadowed figures rarely appear. Audio devices record footsteps, wind, and occasional rustling, but the layering of sounds and voices often eludes clarity. Temperature sensors fluctuate, matching reports of sudden cold pockets along the path, yet offering no conventional explanation. Physical sensations accompany observation. A subtle brush along the arm, a light pressure on the shoulder, or goosebumps rising across skin reinforces awareness. Travelers feel the environment reacting to movement and attention, producing a tangible sense of presence without threat, yet undeniable in its effect. Repeated experiences reveal consistent patterns. Travelers consistently report stretching shadows, fleeting doors in the mist, and footsteps following along empty road. Each encounter confirms that moonlit hollow road retains awareness, responding subtly to those who pass. The phenomena are consistent yet unpredictable, producing the same sense of observation and unease for all visitors. Some leave unsettled. They recall the twisting shadows, doors vanishing in the fog, and footsteps echoing behind them. Memory of the road persists long after leaving, shaping perception, attention, and imagination. Travelers emerge with heightened awareness, carrying the impression of a road that observes, measures, and interacts with presence. By day, the road appears ordinary. Trees line the asphalt, shadows behave normally, and doors do not exist. Footsteps match steps, fog is absent or thin, and the landscape is familiar. Yet nightfall awakens the path, layering sound, movement, and awareness into an immersive experience beyond ordinary perception. Travelers depart carrying memory. Doors, shadows, footsteps, fog, and disorientation remain vivid in awareness. Moonlit Hollow Road leaves the impression of a place alive with observation, reaction, and presence, imprinting experience on every traveler. The road endures, both ordinary and uncanny. By day, it is asphalt, trees, and forest. By night, it becomes alive with shifting shadows, spectral doors, and unseen footsteps. Travelers leave understanding that Moonlit Hollow Road is more than a path, it is a space where perception, memory, and presence converge, leaving ordinary reality suspended and awareness indelibly marked. Creeping Mist Lane winds through a dense forest where trees arch overhead, their branches interlacing to block the sky. The road narrows as it curves, asphalt slick with condensation, and fog rolls in early, thick and unyielding. By day, the lane appears ordinary, a quiet passage through the woods. By night, or under heavy mist, it transforms, alive with shadows, sound, and a presence that seems aware of every movement. Fog clings stubbornly to windshields and windows, refusing to lift or shift. Travelers report that even when the car stops, the fog moves in subtle waves, curling and twisting as though breathing. Visibility drops to a few feet, and shapes emerge from the haze without warning. The environment feels enclosed yet infinite, a corridor that stretches beyond perception, a space where ordinary navigation becomes disorienting and every step demands attention. Ghostly figures lean against the trees lining the lane. They are indistinct, sometimes human in shape, sometimes shifting like smoke caught in the fog. Observers describe their posture as casual, yet the presence feels deliberate, as if the figures are watching and waiting. They do not move when approached directly but vanish as soon as the observer focuses fully, only to reappear moments later further along the lane. Sounds accompany the visual phenomena. Laughter drifts through the mist, soft and inviting at first, carrying a sense of familiarity and curiosity. Observers note that the sound shifts unpredictably, sometimes echoing from one side of the lane to the other, sometimes seeming to come from just above the car. As attention is directed toward the source, the laughter transforms into screams, abrupt and chilling, a sudden shift that creates tension and unease. The lane itself amplifies perception. Every movement across the asphalt produces echoes that travel farther than expected, blending with distant noises and imagined sounds, creating pockets of silence and resonance, making it difficult to distinguish between natural and supernatural phenomena. As if every sound and shadow carries significance. Observers report a heightened sense of awareness. As if every sound and shadow carries significance. The trees and fog create pockets of silence and resonance, making it difficult to distinguish between natural and supernatural phenomena. Observers report a heightened sense of awareness. As if every sound and shadow carries significance. The lane itself amplifies perception. Every movement across the asphalt produces echoes that travel farther than expected, blending with distant noises and imagined sounds, creating pockets of silence and resonance, making it difficult to distinguish between natural and supernatural phenomena. As if every sound and shadow carries significance. Observers report a heightened sense of awareness. A mysterious world stands still. Figures interact subtly with the environment. Some seem to lean on trunks, their hands brushing bark without altering it. Others appear crouched or partially hidden behind trees, vanishing when approached directly. The fog and shadows distort edges and depth, making distances uncertain and creating the sense that the figures are moving independently of the observer's perspective. The auditory experience is layered and unpredictable. Laughter rises and falls, sometimes close, sometimes distant, then abruptly transforms into screams or whispers. Wind whistles through branches, leaves rustle, and occasional branches snap under unseen pressure. The combined effect is immersive, forcing attention and heightening tension with every second spent on the lane. Forcing attention and heightening tension with every second spent on the lane. Every second spent on the lane. The fog shifts slowly, yet constantly. Pockets of denser mist form and dissolve, shaping perception and framing the figures. Shadows move independently of light sources, stretching and shrinking across trunks and the asphalt. Observers describe the lane as both alive and responsive, as if the environment itself is aware of their presence and acting to influence perception and emotion. Even stationary observation does not reduce intensity. Travelers report feeling watched from multiple angles simultaneously. Peripheral vision catches shapes that vanish upon direct attention. Every reflection on the windshield, every shadow between trees, becomes significant. The combination of sight, sound, and fog produces a cumulative effect, immersing visitors fully in a space where ordinary rules of perception no longer apply. Attempts to document the phenomena with cameras or audio devices are largely unsuccessful. Photographs capture only the lane, trees, and fog, while the figures remain elusive. Audio recordings pick up wind, leaves, and distant wildlife, but fail to capture the laughter, screams, or whispers described by observers. The experience exists primarily in perception, vivid, immersive, and undeniable, yet impervious to technological capture. Time is altered on creeping mist lane. Moments stretch and contract unpredictably. A drive that seems brief can feel extended, each curve and shadow amplified. Figures appear and vanish, sounds shift and echo. Sounds shift and echo, and the fog twists perception. Observers describe heightened awareness and an acute sensitivity to every motion, sound, and subtle change in the environment. The lane leaves a lasting impression. Even after departure, travelers recall the fog clinging to glass. The figures leaning silently against trees. And the laughter transforming into screams. Dreams replay sequences of mist, shadows, and sound, reinforcing the immersive effect. The experience lingers in thought, memory, and sensation. A lasting awareness of presence beyond ordinary perception. Creeping mist lane endures as both a physical path and a threshold into layered perception. Every visit engages the senses fully, leaving travelers with heightened awareness. A sense of disorientation and vivid memory of figures, laughter, and screams that persist long after the mist lifts. Leaving travelers with heightened awareness, a sense of disorientation, and vivid memory of figures, laughter, and screams that persist long after the mist lifts. Silent Grove Road stretches through dense trees that lean inward, their branches forming a canopy that blocks moonlight and muffles ordinary sound. The asphalt is cracked in places, lined with leaves and moss that shift softly under the faintest breeze. The air is heavy and still, carrying a chill that penetrates even the warmest car. Observers notice immediately that ordinary noises are muted, replaced only by whispers that drift through the dense air, impossible to locate, yet impossible to ignore. Figures stand in the middle of the road. They appear suddenly, dark shapes that occupy space yet remain untouchable. Observers approaching in vehicles see them disappear as headlights come closer, vanishing in an instant, seeming to reappear in peripheral vision a few yards ahead. Producing a tension that heightens awareness of every curve, shadow, and movement along the road. Whispers rise and fall across the asphalt. The sound is human yet indistinct, carried on the still air. They drift along the road, brushing against the mind without forming words. Producing the sensation of directionless communication. The voices seem to respond to movement, rising as vehicles approach or slowing when a passenger pauses. Creating a dynamic environment of sound and perception. Fingers brush against skin through closed windows. Some travelers report fleeting touches that feel real yet impossible. The sensation comes without warning, brief and chilling, producing the impression of invisible presence close enough to interact but never fully revealed. Observers experience heightened awareness of the vehicle, the surrounding trees, and the road beneath wheels, as if every surface is attuned to their motion. Shadows move independently. The canopy above and surrounding trees cast long, distorted shadows along the road. Forms shift in ways inconsistent with ordinary light, sometimes detaching or stretching toward observers. Peripheral vision catches subtle gestures, shapes that seem to align with motion yet remain untethered. Direct observation often reveals nothing, yet the sensation of observation persists. The road itself alters perception. Straight stretches appear longer or narrower, curves feel steeper, and elevation changes seem exaggerated. Light, shadow, and whispering sound combine to distort ordinary spatial awareness. Each step of the vehicle or footfall outside contributes to perception, producing a sense that the environment is aware of movement and reacting to it. The rustle of leaves, soft groans of trees, and distant wind merge with human-like whispers to create a continuous soundscape. Every creak of tires, shift in weight, or glance to the side contributes to the rhythm of perception, reinforcing the sensation that Silent Grove Road is alive, attentive, and constantly observing. Time feels altered along the road. Short distances take longer to traverse, while pauses at curves seem instantaneous. They appear at varying distances, always aligned subtly with motion. Each sighting reinforces the feeling that presence is persistent, patient, and deliberate, maintaining awareness without interaction. Trees and canopy amplify the experience. Dense branches above capture and bend sound, casting shadows that distort both light and perspective. Leaves sway subtly without wind, and air currents carry whispers along the path. Each step interacts with the environment, producing faint, layered responses that heighten tension and sensory engagement. Even after leaving, awareness persists. Whispers echo in memory, shadows linger in peripheral vision, and the faint sensation of contact remains. Observers report carrying a sense of presence along paths and roads beyond the grove, as though perception of Silent Grove Road extends beyond physical boundaries. The road preserves memory and presence. Every figure, whisper, shadow, and subtle touch contributes to the ongoing awareness embedded in the environment. Observers experience continuity of presence, a rhythm that blends past and present, and a persistent sensation of observation. The grove itself becomes a participant, recording and reflecting motion, perception, and memory. Exiting the grove provides partial relief. Figures vanish, whispers fade, and shadows retract. The air lightens, and ordinary perception resumes, yet memory of alignment, observation, and layered sound remains vivid. Travelers leave with heightened awareness and the lingering impression of attentive presence. Silent Grove Road endures as a threshold. Ordinary in asphalt and trees, extraordinary in effect, the road, canopy, and shadows create an environment where perception, memory, and presence converge. Every visitor contributes to this awareness, reinforcing the sense that figures, whispers, and shadows persist, recording motion and sustaining observation beyond immediate sight. The grove waits silently. Shadows stretch along asphalt, whispers rise with the still air, and unseen figures linger at the edges of vision. Each step, glance, and gesture becomes part of the enduring presence. Silent Grove Road is a space where perception, memory, and environment merge, transforming ordinary passage into an immersive encounter. Leaving every traveler with a lasting impression of observation, shadow, and lingering awareness. Shadowfall Road stretches into dense, heavy fog that blankets the narrow asphalt, swallowing the surrounding forest in a thick, gray haze. Tall trees line both sides of the road, their branches twisted and gnarled, reaching toward passing cars like grasping hands. Headlights pierce the mist in sharp beams, illuminating only fragments of the path ahead, while the periphery remains shrouded in uncertainty and shadow. Every movement is accompanied by a sense of anticipation, as though the road itself is aware of each vehicle and each passenger. Figures appear intermittently in the distance, pale and indistinct against the gray of the fog. They remain stationary for moments, watching silently, before vanishing without a trace as the car approaches. Producing a lingering impression of observation and presence. The figures seem to occupy the space without being part of it, suspended between visibility and absence, moving in a rhythm known only to the road itself. Suspended between visibility and absence, moving in a rhythm known only to the road itself. Auditory phenomena add to the unease. Travelers frequently report the dragging of chains along the asphalt. A sound that rises from the fog and stretches across the road. The metallic scraping carries unevenly, amplified by mist and the hollow space between trees. It seems to originate from nowhere, yet moves in tandem with vehicles, echoing behind or beside them. The sound is irregular, sometimes fading to silence only to return, producing a sense of tension and disorientation that persists throughout the journey. Branches along the road react to light in strange ways. Twisted limbs stretch into headlight beams, appearing closer or farther than reality suggests. Shadows bend and twist independently of the branches themselves, forming shapes that mimic human or animal forms. Reflections on wet surfaces of asphalt or puddles further distort perception, producing fleeting images of movement that vanish when attention is focused directly on them. Travelers often experience a physical sensation of pressure and chill. The fog feels heavier than air, pressing against skin, hair, and clothing. The cold seems to intensify near areas where figures are glimpsed or where the sound of chains drags most distinctly. The effect is subtle yet pervasive, producing a heightened awareness of environment and movement, sharpening senses, and intensifying the impression of being observed. Time perception along Shadowfall Road is irregular. Minutes may stretch during brief stops, while long stretches of driving can feel compressed. The rhythm of shadows, the brief appearances of figures, and the dragging chains create a sensory cadence that bends ordinary experience. Travelers may feel as though they are retracing steps unknowingly or that the road has extended beyond its true physical length, producing an immersive and disorienting engagement with space and environment. Fog behaves like a living presence. It curls around tires and mirrors, enveloping vehicles in soft tendrils, shifting in density and shape with each movement. It obscures distance and exaggerates proximity, making it difficult to judge space or timing. Combined with twisted branches and ephemeral figures, the fog produces a sense that the road is responsive, active, and aware, reacting subtly to the presence of each traveler. Light interacts unpredictably with fog and trees. Headlights catch on mist, producing halos that distort shapes and create illusions of figures moving across the road. Moonlight filtering through gaps in the canopy casts long, shifting shadows that sometimes appear detached from their sources. These distortions merge with auditory cues to create an immersive experience where perception is unreliable, and ordinary rules of sight and sound seem suspended. Shadows move independently of light and object. Some stretch along asphalt in impossible directions. Others appear to approach or retreat in ways unrelated to vehicles. Observers often notice fleeting silhouettes that vanish when approached directly. The combination of figures, branches, and fog produces a continuous sense of movement, anticipation, and watchfulness that engages attention and heightens tension. The dragging chains, twisting shadows, and brief figures all create a layered experience. Auditory and visual phenomena overlap, producing moments where sound and perception merge. Chains may echo in rhythm with footsteps or with glimpses of shadow. Fog may swirl in time with the appearance of distant forms. These interactions create a sense of coherence and intentionality within the environment, reinforcing the impression that Shatterfall Road is not merely passive but alive with memory, presence, and motion. Reinforcing the impression that Shatterfall Road is not merely passive but alive with memory, presence, and motion. Travelers attempting to document the road encounter difficulty. Cameras blur the figures, shadows, and fog. While audio devices capture static, echoes, and metallic dragging that cannot be traced to any visible source. The phenomena resist ordinary recording, preserving their presence in memory and perception rather than in physical media. The road remains enigmatic, a space experienced more than captured, alive in sensation and observation. Even brief passage along Shatterfall Road leaves lasting impressions. The twisted branches, thick fog, glimpsed figures, and dragging chains linger in thought, producing a sense of unease, vigilance, and immersive awareness. Travelers feel observed and enveloped by the environment, a sensation that persists long after leaving the physical road behind. Shatterfall Road endures as a narrow, winding corridor between dark, twisted trees. Where fog moves with apparent intent, shadows stretch independently. And figures appear and vanish within the mist. Chains drag along the asphalt, their metallic rhythm echoing across distance and time. The road merges perception, memory, and environment, creating an immersive, haunting experience that is both compelling and unforgettable, waiting for the next traveler to encounter its living, spectral presence. Darkwater Trail winds through dense woods, a narrow ribbon of asphalt bordered by ancient trees. A stream runs parallel to the road, its waters appearing black beneath the cloak of fog that hugs the trail. The surface reflects little light, producing an impression of depth and darkness that seems to move as the fog shifts. Shadows drift along the water, subtle forms that twist and lengthen with the wind and mist. Observers sense movement even when the surface remains still, as if the stream itself carries memory and presence. Travelers on the trail report sounds that defy explanation. Faint screams rise from the direction of the water. The sound carries across the road as if the stream acts as a conduit. Yet the source is never visible. Moments later the sound fades, leaving only the ambient hush of night and fog. The auditory phenomenon produces heightened attention, as listeners strain to locate the origin. While the mist obscures all landmarks, shadows along the water behave unnaturally. Forms appear in peripheral vision, drifting with the current yet moving independently of it. When approached or focused on directly, the shadows vanish, leaving only the reflection of trees and fog. The effect is persistent, producing the impression that the stream is alive with unseen watchers, responding subtly to movement and observation. Fog amplifies perception. It thickens near the water's edge, muting distant sounds while magnifying close ones. Shapes and light distort in the mist, causing ordinary objects to appear larger, closer, or more threatening than they are. The combination of darkness, water, and fog produces an immersive environment that engages sight, sound, and intuition. Peripheral motion appears constant, yet direct inspection reveals only still water and empty forest. The stream's black surface reflects irregularly. Passing headlights, moonlight, or lanterns illuminate shifting shadows, sometimes suggesting movement within the water itself. Reflections of trees, mist, and sky warp unpredictably, producing forms that appear animate and responsive. Travelers notice subtle changes when pausing or adjusting position, reinforcing the impression that the environment reacts to presence and observation. Reinforcing the impression that the environment reacts to presence and observation. Physical sensations accompany visual and auditory phenomena. The air carries moisture and cold, moving in waves that coincide with perceived shifts in shadow and sound. Combined, these effects produce heightened alertness and a continuous sense of tension, making each step along the trail deliberate and measured. Time behaves strangely on Darkwater Trail. A short stretch of road may feel much longer, while a pause in fog or near a bend can stretch seconds into minutes. Peripheral shadows, moving forms, and echoing screams distort perception, producing uncertainty about distance, progression, and duration. Each movement demands careful observation and attention, as the trail reshapes perception at every turn. Figures appear intermittently along the water's edge. Silhouettes emerge briefly in mist, often kneeling, crouching, or standing silently. They vanish when approached directly, leaving only the reflection of fog and trees. Observers experience the presence as attentive but non-aggressive, producing awareness without threat. The figures reinforce the impression that the stream and surrounding environment retain memory of past events, echoing them in subtle, perceptual ways. Sound is layered and unpredictable. Screams and whispers mingle with the flow of the stream. The rustle of leaves, and the crunch of tires on asphalt. Echoes carry across the trail, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind. Moments of silence are punctuated by faint dripping, snapping twigs, or distant rustling. Each auditory cue amplifies the sense of observation and immersion, making the trail feel alive and responsive to human presence. Visitors note that deliberate, cautious movement reduces intensity slightly, though phenomena remain persistent. Slower driving or walking allows observation of shadows, fog, and reflections with less disorientation, yet the trail continues to produce subtle, interactive effects. Peripheral vision, light, and sound maintain an immersive environment that is both compelling and unnerving, though phenomena remain persistent. Attempts to document Darkwater Trail produce partial results. Cameras capture fog, water, and surrounding trees. Yet the drifting shadows and fleeting figures rarely appear. Audio devices record ambient sounds, yet the layered screams and whispers perceived in person remain absent. The trail preserves its immersive qualities for those physically present, resisting full technological capture while leaving lasting impression. Exiting the trail leaves lingering awareness. Memory retains the black surface of the stream. Drifting shadows, intermittent screams, and the sensation of being watched. Observers carry heightened perception of movement, space, and sound for hours or days after leaving. The environment leaves a lasting psychological impact, transforming an ordinary road into a site of immersive history and subtle supernatural experience. Darkwater Trail endures as a space where water, fog, and perception converge. Shadows drift along black waters. Screams echo without origin. Figures appear and vanish without trace. Travelers leave altered, aware that the trail is alive with observation, history, and memory, producing an unforgettable experience that lingers far beyond the road itself. Hollow Ridge Drive winds through jagged cliffs and dense forest, a narrow road that twists and turns in ways that seem unnatural. By day, sunlight filters through the trees, casting shifting patterns across asphalt and rock. The drive feels isolated but ordinary, the curves gentle enough to navigate and the surroundings quiet but familiar. Travelers sense the remoteness, yet nothing warns of the experiences that await after darkness falls. At night, the road transforms into a corridor of perception and disorientation. Figures appear along the cliffs, standing silently at the edge of precipices. Their forms are shadowed yet distinctly humanoid, motionless yet intent. Observers feel the weight of their gaze even when visibility is poor, a pressure that presses against awareness. Approaching the cliffs yields nothing, the figures vanish instantly, leaving only the rocky ledges behind. The road itself seems altered. Turns feel sharper, distances longer, and curves loop in ways that defy memory or mapping. Travelers report the sensation of moving farther than they should, as though the asphalt stretches and folds around them. Shadows shift independently of light, bending along guardrails and cliff edges, creating the impression of an environment alive and responsive. Clocks stop inside vehicles. Travelers note digital displays freezing mid-count, analog hands halting, and timers ceasing unexpectedly. The effect is localized yet consistent, producing unease and uncertainty about the passage of time. Some report that movement resumes normally once the road straightens or the cliffs recede, as though the phenomenon is tied directly to the twisting path. Shadows crawl along the road. Headlights illuminate shapes that extend beyond reality, stretching across asphalt and rock. Shadows bend over guardrails, merge with the tree line, and retreat when examined directly. Each flicker of light produces new contours, reinforcing the sense that the environment monitors presence and reacts subtly to attention. Sounds resonate unnaturally. Footsteps echo along curves where no one walks. Wind whispers through trees, yet sometimes forms rhythmic murmurs that align with vehicle movement. Rocks seem to shift faintly, and distant crashes echo without origin. Each sound layers with others, producing a rich, immersive environment that disorients and heightens awareness. Temperature fluctuates unpredictably. Cold pockets press against skin, brushing shoulders and necks without visible cause. Warm air flows in other areas, creating subtle but tangible contrasts. Travelers experience chills rising and fading with no consistent pattern, reinforcing the sense that the road itself observes and interacts. Minutes stretch into hours, curves seem to loop endlessly, and straightaways feel shorter than memory suggests. Figures on cliffs vanish and reappear at impossible intervals, shadows shift independently, and auditory cues layer, making navigation and awareness unreliable. The road becomes both longer and shorter, both expansive and confining, creating a persistent sense of uncertainty. Attempts to document phenomena yield inconsistent results. Cameras capture asphalt, cliffs, and trees, yet the figures rarely appear. Audio devices record echoes, wind, and faint murmurs, but the frozen clocks and shifting shadows elude electronic capture. Physical sensations accompany observation. Travelers feel a light touch along the shoulder, pressure along the back, or goosebumps across the skin. The effect is subtle yet unmistakable, producing a tangible awareness of the unseen observers and reinforcing the impression that the road reacts to every movement and glance. Some visitors leave unsettled. They recall figures on cliffs, frozen clocks, stretching shadows, and footsteps echoing where none should be. The sensations linger in memory long after the drive ends. Awareness of the road's presence persists, leaving travelers with heightened perception and a sense of altered reality. Hollow Ridge Drive functions ordinarily by day. Curves follow expected patterns, shadows align with light, and clocks operate normally. The road appears as asphalt, cliffs, and forest, familiar and navigable. Yet nightfall awakens it, layering sound, movement, and perception into an immersive experience beyond ordinary reality. Travelers depart carrying memory. Figures, frozen time, shadows, and footsteps remain vivid in awareness. Hollow Ridge Drive leaves the impression of a road alive with observation and interaction, imprinting experience on memory and perception. By day, it is asphalt, trees, and cliffs. By night, it is alive with figures, shadows, and temporal anomalies. Travelers leave understanding that Hollow Ridge Drive is more than a path, it is a space where perception, memory, and presence converge, leaving ordinary reality suspended and awareness indelibly marked. Nightfall path winds through dense woods where fog drifts low to the ground, curling along the asphalt and wrapping around every tree. By day, the path appears ordinary, a quiet rural road framed by shadowed trunks and undergrowth. As night falls, or when mist rolls in from the valleys, the lane transforms. The fog clings to vehicles, obscuring vision and distorting shapes, creating an environment where perception becomes uncertain and every movement feels magnified. creating an environment where perception becomes uncertain and every movement feels magnified. Passengers report shadows running alongside the vehicle. They are human in shape yet indistinct at the edges, moving with a fluidity that defies ordinary motion. Observers describe the shadows as keeping pace, matching the speed and curves of the car, yet never revealing a source. When headlights swing across the lane, the forms shift, vanish, and reappear further along the path, as if the shadows exist outside conventional time and space. Whispers accompany the shadows. Low, soft, and intimate, they rise from the fog or the roadside, conveying information that seems impossible to know. Observers report hearing descriptions of events from their own past. Phrases or images that stir memory and emotion. The whispers shift direction unpredictably, moving from one side of the vehicle to the other, rising above the engine's hum and fading into the mist, creating a layered auditory experience that is both immersive and disorienting. The road itself enhances the phenomena. Its narrow width, winding curves, and tree-lined edges amplify sound and distort visual perception. Every headlight beam fractures across trunks and fog, creating elongated shadows and highlighting shapes that seem to move independently. Footsteps, leaves rustling, and distant branches snapping echo unnaturally, adding to the sensation that the path is alive and aware of each traveler. Figures move along the lane with purpose. Observers describe them crouching between trees, darting across fog patches, or appearing briefly in the center of the road. When approached, they vanish, yet the sense of their presence remains. The shadows seem to anticipate movement, subtly adjusting in relation to the vehicle, giving the impression that the lane itself is responsive, conscious, and attuned to observation. Fog shifts unpredictably, rising and falling like a living breath. Pockets of thicker mist obscure parts of the lane while revealing others. Shapes appear more distinct in certain areas, dissolving in others. The combination of fog, shadow, and low light creates an environment that is layered, immersive, and alive, engaging every sense and making ordinary perception unreliable. The auditory environment is equally complex. Whispers intermingle with natural sounds, wind through branches, distant animal calls, and the subtle creak of tires on damp asphalt. The echoes of voices seem to move independently of their apparent source, sometimes coming from behind, sometimes from the side, creating an impression of multiple presences surrounding the vehicle. Observers describe an acute awareness of sound, heightening tension and anticipation with each passing moment. Even stationary observation on nightfall path does not lessen the effect. Stopping the car does not halt perception. Shadows continue to drift alongside, and the fog remains dense and active. Observers feel enveloped, caught within a space where time and distance are distorted, where perception dominates and the ordinary rules of reality do not fully apply. Attempts to document the experience with cameras or audio equipment prove inconclusive. Photographs capture the road, fog, and trees, but not the figures or shadows. Audio recordings pick up ambient sounds but fail to capture whispers describing private memories. The phenomena exist primarily in perception, vivid, immersive, and undeniable to those present, yet resistant to technological capture. Travelers leave with heightened awareness and memories that persist far beyond the physical journey. Time on the path feels altered. Minutes stretch and contract unpredictably, each curve revealing new forms, shadows shifting, and whispers rising from fog pockets. The longer one travels or pauses, the more intense the perception of presence becomes. The combination of fog, sound, and shadow creates an environment where attention is heightened, perception sharpened, and ordinary reality suspended. Even after leaving nightfall path, the experience lingers. Memories of shadows keeping pace, whispers recounting personal history, and the enveloping fog remain vivid. Travelers describe dreams in which the road stretches endlessly, and figures drift alongside, and whispers replay fragmented scenes from their own lives. The path leaves an enduring impression, a memory of presence, awareness, and layered perception that continues to haunt long after departure. Nightfall path endures as both physical road and perceptual threshold. Shadows, whispers, and fog converge to create an immersive environment, alive and responsive to every observer. Each journey engages the senses fully, blending perception, memory, and presence. The lane remains a place where ordinary reality is suspended, and travelers encounter figures, sounds, and impressions that linger, leaving a vivid, unforgettable experience along the twisting, mist-covered road. Ashenwood Road winds through a dense forest, where trees press close along narrow lanes, their gnarled branches intertwining above to form a canopy that blocks light and bends sound. Figures appear in the mist. They emerge silently, sometimes perched in branches high above, other times crouched behind trunks. Their forms are dark and indistinct, yet unmistakable. Observers notice movement at the edges of vision, fleeting glances that seem aware of presence, aligning subtly with motion along the road. When approached directly, the figures vanish, leaving only the silence of the fog and the whisper of shifting leaves. Shadows stretch and shift independently. The interplay of fog, moonlight, and tree trunks produces elongated, distorted forms along the road. Shadows detach briefly from their sources, moving ahead or along the edges of the lane, returning when attention shifts elsewhere. Peripheral vision captures their presence, creating a tension that builds with every step, glance, and turn. Sound behaves unnaturally. Footsteps on damp leaves echo louder than expected, and distant rustling seems to move in coordination with observers. Fog distorts perception of space and time. Curves appear longer, bends feel narrower, and trees seem closer or more distant than they are. Each step along the road alters perspective. Shadows, figures, and sounds shift in relation to movement, creating disorientation and heightening attention to the smallest environmental detail. Figures maintain observation. Peripheral glimpses reveal their movement, sometimes mirroring steps or gestures, other times appearing ahead or behind without pattern. They do not approach directly, yet their presence is undeniable. Observation feels deliberate, patient, and continuous, reinforcing awareness of being watched while navigating the fog-laden lane. Mist amplifies memory and sound. The fog carries whispers, echoes of footsteps, and distant creaks, layering them across the road. Every movement interacts with these sounds, producing subtle responses that heighten tension. Observers sense a rhythm that links past and present, a continuity of presence embedded in the road and forest. Light interacts with fog unpredictably. Moonlight and stray beams filter through branches, casting irregular shapes along leaves, trunks, and ground. Shadows twist, merge, and detach, producing forms that seem to mimic movement yet behave independently. Peripheral perception dominates, reinforcing the uncanny effect of Ashenwood Road. The road draws attention inward. Every curve, shadow, and whisper guides focus along the path. Despite unease, travelers feel compelled forward, drawn deeper into the mist and toward the unknown bends of the forest. The combination of presence, perception, and uncertainty creates an immersive sensory environment. Air is heavy with presence. The road stretches out into the unknown. The fog carries subtle pressure along shoulders, faint chills along skin, and a sense of observation without visible source. Footsteps, rustling leaves, and whispers combine into an environment where every motion is amplified, every glance is significant, and every pause is charged with anticipation. Even after leaving, the road continues to resonate. Shadows fade, figures vanish, and whispers dissipate, yet memory of movement, observation, and layered sound persists. Travelers carry the impression of presence along roads beyond the forest, a lingering awareness of attentive eyes and watching shapes. Ashenwood Road preserves continuity. Every figure glimpsed, every shadow detected, and every whispered sound contributes to a layered awareness embedded in the forest. Observers become part of an ongoing rhythm, the environment recording motion and sustaining presence. Past, present, and perception merge into a continuous experience. Exiting the fog provides partial relief. Mist thins, sounds normalize, and shadows retreat. Awareness remains, however, of the figures in branches, the forms crouched behind trunks, and the subtle tug of observation that followed through the fog. Travelers leave the lane changed, carrying heightened perception and lingering tension. Ashenwood Road endures as a threshold. Trees, mist, shadows, and whispers converge to produce an environment where perception, memory, and presence intersect. Figures and forms persist, observing, aligning, and recording. Every traveler contributes to the ongoing awareness, reinforcing the sense that Ashenwood Road is alive, attentive, and continuously present. The road waits silently. Fog drifts through trees, shadows stretch along lanes, and figures linger at the edges of vision. Whispers rise with wind and rustling leaves. Ashenwood Road is a place where environment, perception, and memory merge, transforming ordinary passage into an immersive encounter, leaving every traveler with a lasting impression of observation, shadow, and enduring presence. Phantom Ridge Road stretches endlessly through thick, rolling fog that swallows the landscape in a dense, gray haze. The asphalt disappears into the mist, and the edges of the road blur against darkened trees and rocky embankments. Visibility is minimal, headlights cutting through only a few feet, revealing shapes that shift and move at the limits of perception. Every mile traveled feels suspended in time, as though the road itself bends ordinary measurement and distance. Figures appear along both sides of the lanes, stretching across the width of the road. They are motionless, yet their presence is undeniable. Observers feel the weight of being watched. A subtle pressure pushes against the car, the tires, and the driver's attention. The figures vanish when approached directly, leaving only the memory of form and posture. Their reappearance in the mist is unpredictable, creating a rhythm of presence and absence that keeps travelers alert and uneasy. The fog moves like a living entity, curling around tires, mirrors, and bumpers. Sometimes forming tendrils that trail behind, other times pressing against the front, as if to slow progress. Light refracts across the mist, producing flickers, halos, and transient shapes that resemble movement along the roadside. Travelers often sense figures forming in these reflections, adding to the impression that the fog itself is alive, responsive, and aware. Physical sensations accompany the journey. The effect is unpredictable, occurring more frequently when figures appear in the mist, or when the fog thickens along the curves and inclines. A chill runs down the spine, amplifying tension and producing heightened awareness of every sound, shadow, and movement. Auditory phenomena are layered and disorienting. The distant rustle of trees blends with soft whispers, footsteps along the road, and the occasional metallic scrape. Travelers hear sounds that seem synchronized with movement or attention, rising as the car approaches a figure and fading when focus shifts. These auditory cues, combined with visual perception, create an immersive environment where ordinary rules of cause and effect are suspended. Time and space feel fluid on Phantom Ridge Road. A short stretch of travel may feel interminable, while longer drives can compress into fleeting moments. Shadows linger, figures reappear in patterns that defy ordinary expectation, and perception of distance stretches and contracts unpredictably. Travelers often feel disoriented, retracing paths unknowingly, and aware that the road itself imposes its own rhythm on experience. The figures are not entirely static. Occasionally, a shadow will shift slightly, raise an arm, or tilt in a posture that suggests attention. Observers sense a connection between their presence and the movement of these forms, as if the figures respond subtly to observation without being interactive in a conventional sense. The effect is both unsettling and mesmerizing, producing a continuous tension between awareness and anticipation. Light interacts unpredictably with fog, shadows, and reflective surfaces. Headlights illuminate shapes that vanish when approached, mirrors reflect figures that are not present, and patches of mist refract beams into elongated forms. The interplay of light and fog produces illusions of depth, motion, and presence, heightening the immersive sensation that the road is alive and responsive. Auditory layering is reinforced by terrain and ambient conditions. Inclines and curves amplify footsteps, whispers, and the low hum of movement. Sounds seem to emanate from multiple directions simultaneously, creating the impression of figures surrounding the vehicle. Travelers often report feeling encased by presence, aware of forms beside, ahead, and behind, even when the road appears empty. Documentation of Phantom Ridge Road often fails. Cameras capture fog and reflections, but figures blur or vanish. Audio devices record whispers, footsteps, and metallic echoes. Yet no source is identifiable. The road resists conventional capture, preserving its phenomena through memory and perception. The experience is recorded primarily in sensation, leaving travelers with vivid impressions that endure long after departure. Even brief passage leaves lasting impressions. The stretch of fog, figures, shadows, and subtle steering tugs remain in thought. Travelers carry a heightened awareness of presence, motion, and perception. Each curve, incline, and bend produces lingering tension, a sense of being observed, and the knowledge that the road itself is alive in shadow, mist, and sound. Phantom Ridge Road endures as a spectral corridor, dense with fog and lined by towering, dark forms. Figures appear and vanish, shadows twist across the lanes, and the vehicle responds to unseen forces. Time, distance, and perception bend, leaving travelers aware of presence, observation, and memory intertwined. The road remains, haunting, immersive, and persistent, a space alive with motion, shadow, and spectral life, waiting for the next traveler to enter its mist-shrouded expanse. Eternal Mist Highway stretches endlessly through low hills and dense forests, its asphalt slick and dark beneath the weight of thick, clinging fog. The mist adheres to tires and mirrors, dampening sound and visibility, producing the sensation that the vehicle moves through water rather than air. Trees rise on either side like shadowed sentinels, their forms obscured by layers of fog, bending and twisting with every passing gust of wind. Passengers report an immediate change in perception upon entering the fog. Light from headlights refracts through droplets, casting shifting, indistinct shadows that seem to move independently. Peripheral vision detects shapes that appear briefly alongside the vehicle, then vanish when directly observed. The mist itself seems to move with intent, wrapping around the car, curling along doors, and rising in waves that obscure familiar landmarks. Whispers drift through the interior, faint at first, then increasingly distinct. Voices count numbers, each syllable soft yet deliberate, echoing as if carried along invisible currents. The source is never identifiable, originating from the mist itself, or from the air just outside the vehicle. Passengers feel the cadence of the whispers, their rhythms synchronized with the subtle vibrations of tires on wet asphalt, producing an immersive auditory environment. Shadowy hands appear intermittently, reaching toward the vehicle from the fog. They are indistinct, elongated, and semi-transparent, their fingers stretching as if to touch but never making contact. Movement is slow and deliberate, appearing at the edge of vision before fading instantly. Observers feel the presence of these shapes without threat, a sensation that produces tension and heightened awareness with every glance. A sensation that produces tension and heightened awareness with every glance. The road seems to lengthen unpredictably. Distances between curves and landmarks expand and contract, making travel feel slower than it should. Familiar points along the highway appear delayed, or pass unexpectedly, producing disorientation. Travelers describe a sense of space being altered by the fog, as if perception itself is being manipulated by unseen forces. Sounds are amplified and distorted. The hum of tires, the engine, and the rush of wind interact with the dense mist to create layered echoes. Every movement produces auditory feedback that is difficult to locate in space, creating the impression that the fog carries sound in unpredictable ways. The whispering numbers mix with these echoes, producing a continuous, subtle tension that engages attention and heightens immersion. Physical sensations accompany visual and auditory phenomena. Cold drifts seep through windows and doors, brushing along arms and neck, pressing lightly against the skin. Tires hum against wet asphalt with a vibration that feels synchronized with the shadows and whispers, producing a sense of presence that is both near and intangible. Peripheral perception is enhanced, making every movement outside the vehicle seem significant and intentional. Time on eternal mist highway feels unreliable. Short distances can feel extended, while longer stretches appear compressed. Peripheral figures, shadows, and echoes reinforce temporal distortion, leaving passengers uncertain of duration and distance. Attention becomes selective, guided by movement, sound, and shifting light, producing a continuous immersive experience. The mist interacts dynamically with headlights and reflections. Light scatters unpredictably, producing shifting beams that reveal glimpses of forms and shapes at the edges of perception. Shadows twist and lengthen across the road, creating the impression of movement beyond what is physically present. Observers frequently detect motion in their peripheral vision, only to find emptiness when looking directly. Figures and shapes never make direct contact, yet their presence is unmistakable. Shadowy hands, fleeting silhouettes, and reflections in mirrors appear with subtle intent, suggesting observation and awareness. Peripheral glimpses remain persistent, producing tension and psychological engagement while avoiding direct threat. The fog itself becomes an environment of interaction, shaping perception, attention, and emotional response. Attempts to capture the phenomena technologically often fail. Cameras record fog, light, and passing trees. Audio devices capture wind and tire hum. Yet hands and shadowed figures remain absent. The highway preserves these experiences for those present, leaving technological recording insufficient to replicate the immersive environment. Movement through the fog requires deliberate attention. Slower driving reduces intensity of visual and auditory phenomena, while rapid movement increases perceived activity in shadows and reflections. Peripheral attention remains critical, as the highway responds subtly to observation and presence. Each mile traveled produces renewed awareness of sound, shadow, and perception. Exiting Eternal Mist Highway leaves a lingering effect. Passengers carry memory of shadowy hands, whispering numbers, and the sensation of presence in fog. Awareness of perception, movement, and subtle environmental influence persists beyond the road. The experience reshapes understanding of space, time, and attention, leaving a lasting impression of a highway alive with observation and subtle, immersive phenomena. Whispers count across the mist, shadowed hands reach and vanish, and the road itself bends perception of distance and time. Silver Hollow Road winds through a forest so dense that moonlight struggles to penetrate the mist. Trees arch overhead, their branches entwining to form a tunnel of shadow and fog. By day, the road is narrow but navigable, lined with underbrush and occasional clearings. Travelers passing through notice the isolation, the quiet hum of distant wildlife, and the subtle sway of branches in the breeze. At night, the road becomes a realm of perception and presence. Figures appear along the shoulder, motionless and silent. They stand watching, their forms distinct yet shadowed. Eyes fixed on passing vehicles and travelers. When approached, the figures vanish instantly, leaving only the fog and the impression of observation. Explorers report glimpsing them repeatedly. appearing at varying intervals, always at the edge of vision. And always silent. Moonlight barely illuminates the path. The fog thickens and shifts with an almost sentient motion, creating walls of white that obscure distance and distort perspective. Shadows lengthen and bend across asphalt and roadside debris. Branches cast twisting forms that seem to move independently, crawling across the road and retreating when focused upon. Every step taken along the hollowed path feels measured, as though the road itself monitors each movement. Sounds resonate unnaturally. Travelers hear the rhythmic pounding of hooves, horses galloping along stretches where no animals exist. The echoes carry across the mist, blending with the rustle of leaves and distant wind. The layering of sound produces an immersive environment that disorients and heightens awareness. Temperature shifts unpredictably. Cold air brushes against skin, pressing along arms and neck without draft or source. Some areas feel icy, others remain neutral, producing an awareness of the environment that is tactile and persistent. Explorers report the sensation of presence, as though the road reacts subtly to attention and motion, reinforcing the sense that observers are never alone. Time and distance warp along the hollow road. Minutes stretch or compress unpredictably. Curves feel longer than memory suggests, stretches of asphalt appear unnaturally brief, and fog reshapes visual reference points. Figures vanish and reappear at impossible intervals. Shadows move independently, and sounds layer in ways that make origin and direction impossible to discern. Attempts to document phenomena produce inconsistent results. Travelers feel disoriented, unsure of how far they have traveled or how long they have been on the road. Cameras capture fog, trees, and asphalt, yet the silent figures rarely appear. Audio devices record hooves, rustling, and occasional murmurs, but clarity is elusive. Temperature and motion sensors fluctuate, corresponding to reported cold pockets and presence, yet offer no conventional explanation. Physical sensations accompany the experience. A light touch along the shoulder, pressure along the back, and goosebumps rising across skin intensify awareness. Travelers sense observation without threat, interaction without visible agents. Every step along the hollowed asphalt is accompanied by this subtle, persistent impression of being watched and measured. Repeated visits reveal consistent patterns. Travelers consistently report silent figures on the shoulder, the sound of galloping hooves, shifting shadows, and cold sensations. Each encounter reinforces the sense that Silver Hollow Road retains awareness, responding subtly to presence and attention. Some visitors leave unsettled. They recall figures vanishing into the fog, the pounding of invisible horses, shadows stretching and twisting unnaturally, and cold air pressing against skin. Awareness of the Roada's presence persists long after departure, leaving memory vivid and perception altered. Travelers emerge with heightened attention, carrying the impression of a road alive with unseen observers. By day, Silver Hollow Road functions ordinarily. Fog lifts, shadows align naturally, and figures are absent. Figures, shadows, galloping hooves, and cold pockets remain vivid in awareness. Silver Hollow Road leaves the impression of a road alive with observation, subtly interacting with those who traverse it. The road endures, both ordinary and uncanny. By day, it is asphalt, trees, and forest. By night, it is alive with silent figures, unnatural shadows, and sounds from nowhere. Travelers leave understanding that Silver Hollow Road is more than a path, it is a space where perception, memory, and presence converge, leaving ordinary reality suspended and awareness indelibly marked. Bloodstone Fog Road stretches through a remote forested valley, a narrow ribbon of asphalt lined by dense trees whose branches interlace overhead. At night, fog rolls in from the lowlands, thick and heavy, clinging to the ground and curling around vehicles. The light refracting through moisture to create a faint red glow that seems to pulse along the road. Travelers report figures kneeling on the asphalt. They are dark, humanoid shapes, blurred at the edges yet unmistakably human in posture. Observers describe them as motionless, bowed in reverence or anguish. Their forms vanish when approached directly, only to reappear moments later further along the path. The effect is disorienting, creating a sensation of presence that is both immediate and ephemeral. A reminder that the road is no ordinary passage. Temperature drops suddenly along the fog-covered lane. The air turns icy and heavy, pressing against the skin and seeping into clothing. Passengers feel chills that do not dissipate with movement, as if the cold is concentrated along the stretches of asphalt where the figures appear. The phenomenon is unpredictable, amplifying awareness and heightening tension with every curve of the road. The sensation of being followed is pervasive. Shadows stretch along the edges of the road, shifting independently of light or movement. Observers report a subtle pressure behind them, a sense of presence that keeps pace even when no figure is visible. Every sound of the whisper of wind through branches, the hum of tires on wet asphalt, the occasional crack of a branch feels magnified, interpreted by the mind as evidence of unseen company. The sensation of being followed is pervasive. Every sound of the whisper of wind through branches, the hum of tires on wet asphalt, the occasional crack of a branch feels magnified, interpreted by the mind as evidence of unseen company. Fog interacts with light and shadow to create an immersive environment. Headlights catch moisture in the air, casting elongated forms across the asphalt. The kneeling figures appear in different locations depending on the observer's perspective. And shadows merge with the mist, making distance and scale difficult to judge. The effect is layered, engaging the senses fully and challenging perception at every turn. Auditory phenomena are subtle but disorienting. The wind seems to carry faint murmurs, unintelligible at first, yet forming into whispers that feel personal, echoing along the road and around vehicles. Observers describe the whispers as urgent, insistent, sometimes seeming to call attention to something ahead or behind, creating the impression of awareness that is impossible to locate. The combination of wind, fog, and indistinct voices produces a tension that builds steadily along the path. Figures and shadows move with a deliberate quality. Some appear kneeling, some rising to glance toward the headlights. Others drifting silently along the road's edge. They do not interact with the fog or environment physically. Yet the perception of their motion is vivid. When travelers attempt to approach, the figures vanish, leaving only empty asphalt and the echo of presence. Every appearance reinforces the sensation that the road itself is alive, responsive, and aware. The environment amplifies perception. Trees loom along the edges of the lane, their branches creaking in the wind, leaves rustling with unnatural rhythm. Fog thickens in pockets, obscuring distance and refracting light into unexpected angles. Every glance produces new shapes and shadows that dissolve and reform elsewhere. Observers describe a feeling of layered reality, where ordinary experience is overlaid with perception, memory, and awareness of presence. Even stillness does not reduce intensity. Stopping the car or standing beside the asphalt does not halt perception. The fog remains dense, figures appear and vanish, and shadows stretch and shift. Observers report the sensation of eyes following them, shapes moving independently, and whispers circling from multiple directions. The longer a traveler remains, the more acute the awareness, the more immersive the experience becomes. Attempts to document the phenomena with cameras or audio recorders are largely inconclusive. Photographs capture only asphalt, fog, and trees, while the figures remain absent. Audio devices record wind and ambient sounds but fail to capture whispers or subtle noises described by observers. The experience exists primarily in perception, vivid, immersive, and undeniable, yet impervious to technological capture. Travelers leave carrying memory, tension, and the lingering sense of presence. Time on Bloodstone Fog Road feels altered. Minutes stretch and compress unpredictably. Shadows, figures, and whispers appear and vanish at irregular intervals, creating the impression of motion outside ordinary chronology. Observers describe heightened awareness, acute perception, and a sense that the lane itself is alive, attuned to every movement, glance, and pause. Observers describe a sense of impending doom and madness. The red-tinged fog, kneeling figures, sudden chills, and sense of pursuit combine to produce an experience that lingers long after leaving the road. Travelers describe dreams replaying moments from the lane, shadows drifting alongside the vehicle, whispers echoing events from memory, and the fog enveloping them completely. The experience remains vivid, haunting, and immersive. Bloodstone Fog Road endures as both a physical passage and a threshold into layered perception. Shadows move independently, figures appear and vanish, whispers circle. Whispers circle, and the fog glows red under the headlights. Every journey engages perception fully, blending sound, light, motion, and awareness into an experience that is immersive, unforgettable, and persistent in memory. The lane remains a space where ordinary reality is suspended, presence is undeniable. Presence is undeniable, and travelers leave changed, haunted, and acutely aware of forces beyond the visible. Cursed Pines Lane winds through a dense forest where tall trees lean inward, their branches interlocking to form a living tunnel of shadows. The lane is narrow, the asphalt cracked and lined with needles and fallen leaves, and fog often settles low, obscuring bends and deepening the sense of enclosure. Every movement along the road feels amplified, the rustle of leaves and the soft creak of branches carrying an unnatural resonance that heightens awareness. Figures appear behind the trees. They are dark and indistinct, emerging silently at the edges of vision. Some stand motionless, partially hidden behind trunks, while others shift subtly, aligning with movement along the lane. When approached directly, they vanish, leaving only the whisper of shifting leaves and the faint impression of presence. Their motion is deliberate, patient, and ever observant, creating a tension that is both persistent and elusive. Shadows move independently of light. Moonlight filtering through the dense canopy casts long, distorted shapes along the road. Shadows detach briefly from trees, stretching across the lane or drifting along the edge of the vehicle. Peripheral vision perceives their motion, creating the impression of sentient observation. Each glance or movement triggers subtle shifts in shadow, reinforcing the sense that the forest itself is alive with attention. Footsteps echo on the roof of the vehicle. Travelers report the sensation of movement above them. Light taps or scrapes that coincide with curves, accelerations, or pauses. The sound is impossible to locate and impossible to dismiss, producing heightened awareness and the sense that the lane monitors each step and gesture along its length. Fog and still air distort perception. Dense mist softens outlines, blurring distance and direction. Trees appear closer or farther than they are, shadows stretch or shrink unpredictably. Every motion feels exaggerated, and time itself seems to warp, minutes stretching along straight sections and contracting on bends. Peripheral observation dominates experience, drawing attention to every detail of light, shadow, and movement. The road amplifies tension. Every crunch of leaves beneath tires, every creak of asphalt, every snap of twigs is magnified in the silence. Even the smallest sounds feel significant, each a signal within a larger, layered environment of perception. The lane transforms ordinary travel into an immersive sensory encounter, where presence, awareness, and memory converge. Figures maintain constant observation. They appear at varying distances, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind. Their alignment with motion is subtle, often mirroring steps or gestures. Direct focus dissolves them into air and shadow, yet their sense of being watched is undeniable. Each glimpse reinforces the understanding that observation is deliberate, persistent, and attentive. Shadows and trees interact unpredictably. Branches sway without wind, twigs snap in irregular patterns, and shapes detach from trunks to stretch along the lane. Light catches surfaces unevenly, producing forms that twist, merge, and separate. Peripheral vision perceives them shifting, producing illusions of approach or alignment, while direct observation often yields emptiness. The lane preserves memory. Every footstep, every shift of shadow, every figure glimpsed contributes to a layered environment of perception. The forest retains echoes of past travelers, motions, and impressions, creating a sense that the lane remembers and responds. Awareness of presence extends beyond the immediate, blending past, present, and perceptual experience. Fog deepens immersion. Mist drifts through the trees, softening edges and masking distance. Figures appear and disappear within it, their movement synchronized with motion along the lane. Whispers rise faintly from the fog, intangibly directed toward travelers, urging caution while drawing them forward. The effect is disorienting and immersive, producing heightened attention and a persistent sense of tension. Even after leaving, the forest lingers. Shadows retreat, figures vanish, and footsteps cease on the vehicle roof. Yet memory of observation, peripheral movement, and layered sound persists. Travelers carry a sense of attentive presence along roads beyond the lane, a lingering awareness that the forest continues to watch. Cursed Pines Lane endures as a threshold. Trees, shadows, fog, and whispers converge to produce an environment where perception, memory, and presence meet. Figures persist in observation, aligning subtly with motion and attention. Every traveler contributes to this ongoing awareness, reinforcing the sense that the lane is alive, attentive, and continuously recording. The forest waits silently. Branches sway, shadows twist, and whispers drift through the mist. Footsteps echo faintly on leaves and asphalt, while unseen figures maintain alignment with movement. Cursed Pines Lane is a place where perception, memory, and environment merge, transforming ordinary passage into an immersive encounter. Leaving every traveler with a lasting impression of observation, shadow, and enduring presence. Shivering Hollow Road stretches through a dense forest, narrow and winding, enveloped in fog that coils and drifts in unnatural patterns. The mist does not simply hang in the air, it moves deliberately, curling around tires, mirrors, and vehicle edges like a living entity. Headlights slice through the haze, illuminating glimpses of the road ahead, but the sides remain obscured, hiding trees, underbrush, and unseen forms. Every curve produces a sense of anticipation, as if the road itself is alive, watching, and responding to those who traverse it. Shadows move independently along the roadside. They do not align with the trees, the fog, or any visible source of light. These movements are subtle yet persistent, creating an immersive awareness that extends beyond ordinary vision. Figures appear intermittently in the distance. They are pale, indistinct, and often frozen in posture that suggests screaming. Yet no sound emerges from their lips. The combination of motionless form and implied sound is unsettling, embedding in memory and amplifying tension with every glimpse. The fog amplifies every sound. Leaves rustle, tires hum, and distant branches creak, yet these ordinary noises are layered with phantom auditory phenomena. Observers report faint, inhuman cries, whispers, and echoes of footsteps that appear to move with them. The sounds shift unpredictably, rising when attention is focused and fading when the eyes look elsewhere. The effect produces heightened awareness and a pervasive sense of presence beyond the physical environment. Light interacts with fog and trees in strange ways. Headlights illuminate forms that vanish when approached, and reflections off wet leaves or asphalt produce fleeting impressions of figures and motion. Moonlight filtering through dense canopy casts long, shifting shadows that detach from the trees, creating shapes that suggest human or animal forms in motion. Moonlight filtering through dense canopy casts long, shifting shadows that detach from the trees, creating shapes that suggest human or animal forms in motion. The interplay of light and shadow reinforces the impression that the road is alive, responsive, and populated with unseen observers. Travelers often report physical sensations along shivering hollow road. The air feels heavier, pressing gently against the chest and shoulders. A chill moves across the body in unpredictable bursts, especially near shadows or appearing figures. The road produces subtle nudges against tires or steering, a sensation that leaves the driver aware of forces beyond ordinary control. The combination of cold, pressure, and sensory tension amplifies the immersive experience. Time perception is altered while traveling the road. Short stretches can feel interminable, and longer drives can compress into fleeting seconds. Shadows, figures, and fog patterns repeat unpredictably, creating a sense of disorientation and bending perception of distance. Travelers often feel that the road has extended or contracted, guided by forces beyond conventional reality. Each bend and incline intensifies attention, producing continuous immersion in the sensory environment. The forest edges shift in perception. Trees seem closer or farther than expected. Shadows rise above and behind trunks independently of light. Branches twist toward the vehicle as if reaching. Observers feel a subtle connection between motion and appearance of figures, the environment reacting to awareness without explicit interaction. These phenomena produce an uncanny rhythm, drawing attention to every movement, every flicker of shadow, and every curl of fog. Leaves, branches, and distant wildlife are audible, yet these natural sounds are interwoven with whispers, footsteps, and muted cries that do not correspond to physical sources. Travelers describe hearing their own movements echoed by the forest, steps appearing in synchronization or opposition to their own, creating an immersive, disorienting environment. The layering produces an ongoing rhythm of anticipation and presence. Attempts to document shivering hollow road often fail. Cameras blur figures, shadows, and fog, capturing only partial forms or distorted light. Audio devices record whispers, cries, and footsteps, yet cannot identify sources. The road preserves its phenomena through perception and memory, resisting conventional observation and emphasizing immersion as the primary form of experience. Memory becomes the record of the journey, shaped by sight, sound, and sensation. Even brief passage leaves lasting impressions. Twisting shadows, moving fog, appearing figures, and phantom cries linger in thought. Drivers and passengers emerge with heightened awareness, a sense of disorientation, and a vivid memory of presence. The road leaves a subtle, persistent tension that continues beyond the physical journey, lingering in mind and perception. Shivering hollow road endures as a corridor of fog, shadow, and presence. Figures appear and vanish, shadows move independently, and mist curls like a living thing. Time, distance, and perception bend, leaving travelers aware of observation, motion, and memory intertwined. The road remains haunting, immersive, and persistent, waiting for the next traveler to step into its swirling fog, where shadows scream silently, and presence is everywhere. Twilight Vale Road stretches through dense forests and low hills, a narrow path that seems ordinary until dusk approaches. As the sun dips below the horizon, fog rises from the ground, thickening into a tunnel of mist that envelopes the road. Headlights diffuse into the haze, casting a muted glow that barely penetrates the veil. Shapes of trees appear elongated and twisted, and shadows stretch across the asphalt as if alive. At each end of the road, figures appear, motionless and human in form. They stand silently, their outlines blurred by fog, yet unmistakably present. Observers notice them in peripheral vision first, glimpses that vanish when attention is focused directly. The figures remain in place, as if guarding the entry and exit, watching travelers as they enter the tunnel of mist. Whispers seem to emanate from inside the car. Passengers report hearing faint, unintelligible voices. A susurration that grows and recedes with the movement of the vehicle. The sound is subtle yet distinct, carrying through closed windows and doors, creating the impression that the car itself is filled with an unseen presence. The whispers produce heightened attention, drawing focus to every movement and shadow along the road. Fog interacts with light and perception. Headlights, taillights, and distant glows bend in the mist, producing shifting patterns of illumination. Shadows appear to move independently of trees and road features, creating the impression of figures crossing the road or pacing alongside the vehicle. Peripheral vision constantly detects motion that vanishes when directly observed, amplifying the sense that the road is alive with unseen activity. The road seems to stretch unpredictably. Distances between trees and curves appear longer than memory suggests, making travel feel slower and more uncertain. Familiar points along the route appear delayed or distorted, creating disorientation. The tunnel of fog amplifies this effect, making it difficult to judge distance or progression. Time itself feels altered as travelers navigate the twisting path. Physical sensations accompany visual and auditory phenomena. A chill brushes along the arms or neck, sometimes rising as a pressure along the chest or shoulders. Moisture from fog collects on skin, and the air feels heavier than normal. Passengers feel as though the environment responds to attention and movement, producing a heightened sense of presence and awareness that persists throughout the journey. Figures at the ends of the road remain stationary yet impose a subtle psychological presence. Travelers feel watched without threat, an awareness that each movement is noted. Peripheral glimpses of shapes along the road reinforce this sensation, creating tension and anticipation. The environment is immersive, shaping perception without direct interaction or aggression. Sounds are layered and unpredictable. The hum of tires on asphalt mixes with the whispers, the faint rustle of leaves, and occasional distant animal calls. The mist amplifies certain sounds while muting others, producing a dynamic soundscape that is difficult to localize. Echoes create the impression of movement ahead or behind, enhancing disorientation and reinforcing the sense of observation. The sense of observation is reinforced, creating a feeling of unease and a sense of being watched. The fog reacts subtly to movement. Rapid acceleration produces shifting shadows and elongates peripheral figures. Slower travel allows a more stable view of shapes, though the stationary figures remain constant. Awareness is heightened as travelers adjust to the interplay of light, fog, sound, and shadow, navigating an environment that seems conscious of presence and observation. Attempts to document the phenomena often fail to capture the full experience. Cameras record fog and light but rarely capture the figures or shadows perceived at the edges of vision. Audio devices capture ambient sound but miss the whispers experienced within the vehicle. Twilight Vale Road preserves its immersive qualities for those present, resisting replication or technological recording. Exiting the road leaves lingering impressions. Memory retains the tunnel of mist, the figures at each end, and the whispers inside the car. Awareness of perception, shadow, and presence remains heightened long after departure, shaping how travelers experience space, light, and sound. The road leaves a lasting psychological effect on how travelers experience the world. A mysterious world stands still. Twilight Vale Road endures as a place where fog, shadow, and perception converge. Figures stand motionless at either end, whispers fill the interior of vehicles, and light bends unpredictably in the mist. Travelers leave altered, aware that the road is alive with observation, shaping perception and producing an immersive experience that lingers far beyond the journey. Wailing Creek Road winds through dense forest. A narrow path flanked on one side by a creek, whose waters turn black beneath the low-hanging fog. Travelers leave altered, aware that the road is alive with observation, shaping perception and producing an immersive experience that lingers far beyond the journey. By day, the creek appears ordinary, flowing quietly over rocks and fallen leaves, reflecting sunlight in patches along the banks. The road is quiet but navigable, lined with trees and the occasional clearing, carrying a sense of isolation and stillness. At night, the road transforms into a space alive with presence and perception. The creek becomes a mirror of darkness, reflecting nothing but the mist and shadows of the forest. Screams echo across the surface, rising and falling in layered waves. They are human in tone, yet cannot be traced to any living source. The cries mingle with the sound of water, leaves, and distant wind, creating a haunting auditory landscape that surrounds travelers from all directions. Figures appear along the banks. Shadowed forms stand motionless at the edge of the creek, watching silently. They are distinctly humanoid, yet their presence is ghostly, seeming to hover on the threshold between the water and land. When approached, they vanish instantly, leaving only the black water and thick fog behind. Observers glimpse them repeatedly, always fleeting, always just beyond clear vision, reinforcing the sense that the road itself is aware. Shadows move unnaturally across the road and water. The light of headlights, moonlight, or lantern stretches shapes in ways that defy normal angles. Shadows crawl along banks, snake across asphalt, and retreat when examined. Every curve, bend, and clearing seems to deepen and distort under their influence, creating an environment that is alive, responsive, and unpredictable. Sounds layer and echo. Footsteps, distant cries, and rustling leaves combine in overlapping patterns. Screams appear both nearby and far, rising and fading as though following travelers along the path. The creek amplifies the effect, carrying echoes across its black surface and back, producing an immersive environment that heightens tension and perception. Temperature fluctuates unexpectedly. Cold pockets press against skin and clothing, rising along arms and neck without wind or visible source. Some areas of the road feel warmer in contrast, producing subtle but tangible sensations of awareness. Travelers report that the air itself seems to respond to movement, creating a sense that presence is observed and measured. Time and distance distort. Minutes stretch and collapse unpredictably. The creek appears longer, bends feel farther than they are. And shadows and figures vanish and reappear along the banks. Footsteps echo at irregular intervals. And the cries from the water layer in ways that disorient perception. Travelers struggle to gauge how far they have traveled or how long they have been on the road. Attempts to record phenomena yield inconsistent results. Cameras capture the road, creek, and fog, yet shadowed figures rarely appear. Audio devices record screams, splashes, and rustling, but clarity is inconsistent. Temperature sensors fluctuate in localized areas, corresponding with reported cold pockets and touches, but offer no conventional explanation. Physical sensations accompany observation. Travelers sense presence without aggression, a subtle interaction that reinforces the impression of being observed and measured along every stretch of the road. Repeated experiences reveal persistent patterns. Travelers consistently report shadowed figures on the banks, layered screams across the creek, shifting shadows, and cold pockets. Each encounter reinforces the perception that Wailing Creek Road retains awareness, responding subtly to presence and attention. The phenomena are consistent yet unpredictable, producing similar impressions for all who traverse the road. Some visitors leave unsettled. They recall shadows vanishing into fog, screams echoing from the creek, and the persistent chill that follows them. Awareness of the Roada's presence lingers long after departure, imprinting memory and perception with vivid sensations. Travelers emerge with heightened attention and a sense of altered reality. By day, Wailing Creek Road functions ordinarily. The creek flows visibly, shadows follow light naturally, and figures are absent. Footsteps and vehicles behave predictably. The asphalt stretches in expected distances, and the forest appears static. Yet nightfall awakens the path, layering sound, movement, and presence into an immersive environment beyond ordinary perception. Travelers depart carrying memory. Figures, shadows, echoes, and chilling sensations remain vivid. Wailing Creek Road leaves the impression of a road alive with observation, subtly interacting with those who traverse it. The road endures, both ordinary and uncanny. By day, it is asphalt, creek, and forest. By night, it is alive with shadows, figures, and screams across black waters. Travelers leave understanding that Wailing Creek Road is more than a path, it is a space where perception, memory, and presence converge, leaving ordinary reality suspended and awareness indelibly marked. Moonshadow Drive winds through a forested stretch where trees arch overhead, their limbs forming twisted patterns in the moonlight. The road is narrow and curving, asphalt slick with moisture that glimmers under the silver glow. By night, the landscape transforms, shadows stretch unnaturally, fog drifts along the ground, and the ordinary becomes uncanny. Moonlight casts long shadows that twist and bend in ways that defy expectation. Observers report that shadows seem to move independently, stretching along the asphalt, curling around trees, and lengthening toward vehicles. Every light source interacts with the environment, creating a shifting tapestry of dark shapes and pale illumination. The effect is immersive, compelling, and disorienting, heightening awareness and sharpening perception with every passing moment. Figures appear along the drive. They are human in form yet indistinct, running alongside vehicles without slowing. Observers describe a sense of purpose in their motion, a relentless pace that cannot be matched or caught. When approached or looked at directly, the figures vanish into mist, only to reappear moments later further along the road. The presence is both startling and hypnotic, producing a sensation of being observed while moving through a space that feels alive. A sense of being observed while moving through a space that feels alive. Mist clings to the ground, wrapping around tires and drifting into headlights. Within the haze, shapes form and dissolve, sometimes appearing as figures in motion. Other times as fleeting reflections or elongated shadows. Observers report seeing their own reflection in the fog, distorted and staring back with empty, unblinking eyes. The reflection does not mimic movement, yet its presence is immediate and unsettling, creating a layered experience of self and environment. Auditory phenomena accompany the visual. Leaves rustle with no apparent wind, branches creak as if brushed by unseen hands, and the faint hum of motion rises through the forest. Travelers describe the sounds as interactive, responding to their own movements, reinforcing the sense of presence that surrounds the vehicle. Is amplified and echoed in the environment. The drive itself amplifies perception. Curves, dips, and bends in the asphalt distort distance and scale. Trees form irregular patterns that cast unpredictable shadows. Light refracts through mist and moisture, creating forms that appear animate, shifting independently of actual movement. Observers report a compounding effect over time. The longer the drive, the more vivid the shadows, the more insistent the figures, and the more acute the sense of being watched. Figures move with apparent intelligence. Some run alongside the vehicle, pacing it perfectly without slowing. Others appear crouched behind trees or mist pockets, disappearing when approached. The combination of motion, presence, and ephemeral visibility produces a layered sense of reality. Where ordinary rules of space and time feel suspended. Awareness is heightened, every glance and movement carries significance. And ordinary landmarks appear altered or impossible to judge. Moonlight and fog interact continuously, shaping perception. Light reflects off asphalt, mist diffuses brightness. And shadows merge and dissolve unpredictably. Observers describe moments when the entire environment seems alive, responding to observation, motion, and attention. The effect is immersive, engaging multiple senses simultaneously, producing tension, anticipation, and a profound sense of otherworldliness. And observers describe moments when the entire environment seems alive, responding to observation, motion, and attention. Responding to observation, motion, and attention. The effect is immersive, engaging multiple senses simultaneously, producing tension, anticipation, and a profound sense of otherworldliness. Producing tension, anticipation, and a profound sense of otherworldliness. Even when stationary, perception does not diminish. Observers report that figures continue to appear alongside the vehicle, reflections linger in mist, and shadows stretch or curl independently. Observers report that figures continue to appear alongside the vehicle, reflections linger in mist, and shadows stretch or curl independently. Reflections linger in mist, and shadows stretch or curl independently. And shadows stretch or curl independently. Sounds of movement and subtle creaking amplify, producing a sensation of being encircled. Producing a sensation of being encircled. The drive itself feels conscious, aware of each observer, every step, and every glance, creating an environment where perception dominates and ordinary expectations are suspended. Aware of each observer, every step, and every glance. Every step, and every glance. Creating an environment where perception dominates. And ordinary expectations are suspended. Attempts to document the experience often fail. Cameras capture fog, trees, and asphalt, yet the figures vanish from every frame. Audio devices pick up wind, branches, and distant wildlife, but fail to capture whispers, footsteps, or the subtle hum of presence. The experience exists primarily in perception, immersive, undeniable, and unforgettable, yet resistant to technological recording. Travelers leave with memory, heightened awareness, and a lingering sense of presence that persists long after the journey concludes. Time is distorted on Moonshadow Drive. Minutes stretch and contract unpredictably. Figures run, vanish, and reappear at irregular intervals. Shadows move independently, reflecting and twisting. And reflections in mist shift unnaturally. Observers describe a sense of altered chronology, where ordinary passage of time feels suspended. And perception is fully engaged in navigating both space and unseen forces. Moonshadow Drive remains a place where ordinary reality and layered perception converge. Moonlight, fog, shadows, figures, and reflections interact to create an immersive, unforgettable experience. Every journey engages the senses fully, leaving observers with a lasting impression of motion, presence, and awareness. The drive endures as both a physical path and a threshold into uncanny perception, a place where travelers encounter figures, shadows, and reflections that linger long after the journey has ended. Phantom Fog Highway winds through rolling hills where the asphalt disappears into thick, heavy mist. Figures emerge from the fog. They appear suddenly, dark shapes aligned with the vehicle, moving in perfect synchronization. Whether walking, pacing, or hovering at the edge of vision, they mirror motion flawlessly. Glances toward them often reveal nothing, yet peripheral vision captures shifting forms that seem aware of every turn of the wheel, every acceleration, and every pause along the road. Their motion is deliberate and constant, producing a sensation of being followed without ever being caught. The sounds are layered and continuous, echoing off hills and distant trees. High-pitched cries blend with low, murmuring whispers, creating a disorienting tapestry that fills every sense. No source can be pinpointed, yet the intensity grows as the fog thickens. Travelers report that the auditory landscape seems synchronized with motion, amplifying the sensation of being observed and controlled by the environment itself. Shapes detach from trees, road edges, and even the fog itself, stretching and shifting unpredictably. Peripheral perception captures them aligning with movement, sometimes ahead, sometimes trailing behind. Direct focus dissolves them into the mist, yet their presence lingers, reinforcing the awareness of constant observation. Every glance, every reflection in the vehicle mirrors contributes to the illusion of forms moving in response to motion. The fog distorts perception of space and time. Distance becomes difficult to judge, hills appear steeper, and curves seem endless. Driving along stretches of road feels prolonged, while pausing at a bend may feel instantaneous. Peripheral cues, shadows, and the movement of figures create a fluid sense of duration, producing the disorienting impression that time stretches and contracts at the will of the mist. Vehicles themselves seem part of the rhythm. Each movement of the car is mirrored in subtle ways by shadows, figures, and peripheral motion. Wheels rolling over asphalt produce amplified echoes, and rustling leaves or shifting branches accentuate the sense of presence. Wind, rustling leaves, and faint groans of distant trees blend with human-like murmurs to create a continuous soundscape. Footsteps along the roadside echo in rhythm with movement, distant taps on the vehicle roof or hood heighten tension, and every micro-movement triggers subtle auditory responses. Awareness of environment becomes acute, every motion amplified in perception. They appear ahead, behind, and along the edges of vision. Their alignment with motion is precise yet fleeting. Glances reveal forms that mimic gestures or mirror steps, but direct focus often produces emptiness. Presence is deliberate and patient, reinforcing the sensation that the road itself, figures, and fog are aware of every movement. Mist amplifies memory and presence. Each footfall, shadow, and whisper contributes to a layered record embedded in the fog, road, and surrounding hills. Observers sense continuity between past travelers and present motion, a subtle rhythm of presence that extends beyond immediate perception. Peripheral cues interact with memory, producing a persistent sense of being accompanied along the highway. Fog thins, figures vanish, and whispers fade, yet memory of alignment, observation, and layered sound endures. Travelers carry a lingering awareness of synchronized motion, peripheral shadows, and the tactile sense of presence long beyond the physical boundary of the road. Shadows, whispers, fog, and observation converge into a perceptual environment that records motion and sustains presence. Visitors contribute to this awareness, reinforcing the sense that the highway is alive, attentive, and continuously observing. Every traveler becomes part of the ongoing rhythm of perception, motion, and memory embedded in the environment. Exiting the mist provides partial relief. Figures fade into haze, shadows retract, and whispers diminish. The air lightens, and ordinary perception resumes. Yet awareness remains heightened, peripheral senses attuned, and memory of observation persists. Leaving every traveler with the profound impression that the fog continues its silent vigilance. Phantom Fog Highway endures as a threshold. The road, hills, fog, and shadows merge to create a space where perception, memory, and environment interact. Observation, sound, and movement converge to produce an immersive encounter. Every step through the mist, every glance at figures, and every echo of sound becomes part of the enduring presence of the highway, leaving a lasting impression of vigilance, shadow, and layered perception. The mist remembers every scream. The trees remember every shadow. And the roads remember every traveler who dared to enter. Thank you for traveling down these haunted fog roads with me tonight. Some explorers leave terrified. Some vanish entirely. And some carry the shadows of the fog with them, long after they have gone. If you ever find yourself driving through a foggy road at night, and the wind carries strange whispers or faint screams, pay attention to the shapes moving alongside you. The fog may not just be mist. Would you dare to travel down one of these haunted fog roads alone, or would you turn back while there is still light to guide you? Rest well, my friend. Until our next journey into the haunted unknown.